Energy shortages can be caused by persistent high heat, equipment failure, weather events, or natural disasters such as wildfires. These events are most likely to occur during the summer months, so it's critical to prepare now. The tariff requires the ISO to ensure procedures are in place to notify market participants and the public of potential energy shortages when electricity supplies get tight. These notifications announce the possibility of adverse grid or market conditions and prepare ISO entities to take action if needed to ensure the reliability of the grid. System emergency notifications can be statewide or limited to a local area. Depending on the severity of the situation, they may be issued a day in advance or on the day of the event in real time. The ISO used alerts, warnings, and emergency notifications, or AWE messages in the past, to signal activation of system emergency procedures. This summer, the ISO is changing its messaging system to align with NERC's Energy Emergency Alert, or EEA designations. What does this mean for you? Let's look at what you can expect as a result of this alignment. Let's start with Flex Alerts, Restricted Maintenance Operations, or RMOs, and Transmission Emergency Notifications. These notification types will not be affected by the move to the EEA designations. Each of these notifications can be multi-day events, but they are generally issued for specific hours. A Flex Alert is a call to consumers to voluntarily conserve electricity when the ISO forecasts a supply shortage, especially if the anticipated shortage requires dipping into reserves to cover demand and triggers investor-owned utilities to consider activating residential emergency load reduction programs. Whenever possible, Flex Alerts are issued a day ahead to help curb demand before supply shortages occur in real time. In addition to Flex Alerts, the ISO may issue a Restricted Maintenance Operations Notice when it anticipates high demand. These supply-side notices advise generator and transmission operators to postpone any planned outages for routine maintenance. This measure ensures all grid assets are available during the specific time period when system stress is expected. Like Flex Alerts, the ISO issues Restricted Maintenance Operations Notices at least a day in advance whenever possible. SCs must review and reschedule any planned outages during the Restricted Maintenance Operations period identified in the notice. Finally, the ISO may issue a transmission emergency for any event threatening or limiting transmission grid capability, including line or transformer overloads or loss. These notices are issued in real time for the current and next hour or hours. When a transmission emergency is issued, investor-owned utilities may put load management procedures into effect in the impacted area. SCs in the area should submit bids for all available resources, as well as prepare for incremental dispatch and emergency assistance instructions from the ISO. The AWE system notification levels that are transitioning to EEA levels include alerts, warnings, and Stage 1, 2, and 3 emergencies. Instead of issuing an AWE alert, the ISO will now issue an EEA watch. The ISO will issue an EEA watch by 1500 the day before, when the day-ahead forecast shows that 1 or more hours may be energy deficient. The ISO will also automatically issue a Flex Alert when it issues an EEA watch in the day-ahead timeframe. If a sudden onset event occurs after the day-ahead market runs, an EEA watch may be issued after 1500. EEA watch periods may be extended, but there will not be a discontiguous EEA watch during the day. For example, if the initial EEA watch was issued for 1600 to 1800, and another deficit is projected for the 1900 to 2100 period, the EEA watch will be modified to 1600 to 2100. An EEA watch directs participating customers to prepare generators designated for emergency use for dispatch, and to prepare to reduce load through their respective emergency demand response programs for the designated time period. When real-time analysis forecasts 1 or more hours in the future will be energy deficient, and all available generation is projected to be in use, the ISO will issue an EEA 1-level notification. EEA 1 notifications are issued the day of the anticipated event, ideally hours ahead of the deficiency period. It corresponds to the warning notice under the ISO's AWE system. An EEA 1 notification signals that the ISO is concerned about sustaining its required contingency reserves. It encourages continued conservation efforts and additional supplemental energy and ancillary services bids from energy market participants. If the energy deficiency persists, the ISO may issue an EEA 2 notification. An EEA 2-level notification corresponds to both an AWE warning, which requires the dispatch of demand response or RDRR programs, and a Stage 1 emergency. The ISO issues an EEA 2 in real time for the current or next hour. It directs utilities to dispatch demand response resources and requests load reductions for non-firm load to help the ISO solve the deficiency and maintain contingency reserves. The EEA 2 end time is projected in the notification, but it could be updated if the time period needs to be extended, or ended if the emergency load management programs are no longer needed for reliability. While the EEA 2 is in effect, the ISO encourages additional bids for supplemental energy and ancillary services. When the real-time forecast predicts the balancing authority cannot maintain its contingency reserves and firm load interruption becomes imminent, the ISO will issue an EEA 3-level notification. The EEA 3-level notification includes both Stage 2 and Stage 3 emergency notifications. If the EEA 3 is issued in real time for the current or next hour, the ISO is counting armed firm load as non-spend contingency reserves. If the EEA 3 is issued in real time and projects the deficiency within the next 10 minutes of the current hour, it means the ISO is unable to maintain its contingency reserves, and manual load shedding is starting or in progress. If this is the case, load-serving entities will receive a phone call from California ISO system operators. Utilities should always make sure that the ISO has the most current contact number for receiving operating instructions to manually shed firm load. The ISO keeps stakeholders and customers informed of grid events through a variety of publicly available communication channels. These include the ISO's Twitter handles and system operating messages found at the bottom of the OASIS homepage. Emergency alerts are published on the ISO Today mobile app as well. If you want to receive emergency alerts or system status update emails, open a city ticket to be added to the appropriate distribution lists. For a complete listing of how the ISO communicates each type of emergency alert, review the ISO Communications Methods document. This document provides all the information you need to know about how to stay informed about grid events. You can find a link to this document in the Resources tab. You'll also find links to all applicable operations procedures related to emergency alerts in the Resources section. To access Balancing Authority Area and RC West Emergency Operating Procedures on the California ISO website, go to Rules on the homepage, then select Operating Procedures. The ISO is committed to ensuring grid reliability during tight supply conditions and emergency conditions. Thank you for your support as we prepare for summer 2022.